Welcome to the Astrology Forecast, June of 2024, with astrologers Justin Crockett, Elzie, and Elizabeth Liz Muschett. Hi, Justin. It's good to see you
Hey,
again.
Liz, how are you doing this evening?
Good, thank you. It's
Yeah,
great to be back and do another forecast.
this is going to be a great month. Before we get into it, what do you think is kind of the theme that you're thinking about for this month? Overall, if you had to put a bumper sticker or title for the month of June, what would it be?
Well, I'd say write everything down.
Okay.
Journal.
Okay.
Because I think ideas are going to come fast and quick, and if you don't write them down, they might just go by so fast that you'll lose them.
Well, let's jump into it then.
Do you have something to add?
Well, no, I would agree with you. I think for me, it's going to be communications. Right?
And research.
Yeah, research.
Okay, so Justin Crockett Elzie's website is justincrocketelzie.com, and his email is justin.elzie@gmail.com, and my website is alightpath.com, and you can email me, liz@alightpath. So we're in the month of Gemini, or the Gemini energy is in the month of June. It started, the sun moved in a few days ago into Gemini. So we have a mutable air sign, and the ruling planet is Mercury. Gemini is adaptable, versatile, expressive, dexterity, sociable, clever, multifaceted, and intelligent. And the caution would be moody, nosy, opinionated, nervous energy, or high strung, duality, restless, and indecisive. Would you like to add anything, Justin?
Well, yeah, this Gemini season we're in, I would just say great time to, as we were talking about, for learning, intelligence, and communications is hugely important. I'd say start writing now, start journaling now, and be careful though. I always like the caution for me with Gemini is it can be scattered. Kind of like doesn't it's kind of can go in multi different directions and not completing anything. So that would be the one caution I would say.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to start out with the chart for June 1st, and it's a bowl-shaped chart with Pluto leading the pack.
Mm-hmm.
The chart ruler is Saturn in Pisces in the second house, and the moon is in Aries. So we have this flow of energy, kind of like a highlight over the month. And I know you had pointed out some other things about this chart that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, kind of on that theme of the month of or the season of Gemini, we're in the Gemini season. One thing that really jumped out to me when I looked at this chart, Liz, was that Uranus Mercury conjunction. If we talk about conjunctions here, because we know that Mercury rules Gemini, but that Uranus is considered a higher planet vibration. It's also a planet of communications, but a higher vibration of that. And so I find it that's kind of powerful in the chart that they're conjunct at this particular point for the month. Is this is sort of the month chart, and I think it highlights the Gemini season.
Yes, that's good. And those Mercury and Uranus are at the very bottom of the chart there in Taurus. So if you were looking at a wall clock, it would be at 6 o'clock. So those people that aren't familiar with the different planets and the glyphs, that they know where it's at. So thanks.
Yeah, and what else? Can we stay with that chart just for a second? So, what else? I mean, I think there's a couple other things that kind of jump out at us with themes for the month, don't you think? Here, what are the themes do you see there that I knew you were talking about before we jumped on here today?
The Sun and Venus are conjunct. They're really close together. They're within 1 degree, it looks like, in Gemini, and they're in the fourth house there. So, highlighting that the Venus and the Sun is lighting up, and they're in the sign of Gemini. So, lots of communication, things in your community, your neighborhood, your neighbors, your siblings, short trips. It's like there's a lot. So there could be a lot of traveling required, which I'm having to schedule in some extra traveling myself. I mean, they're short trips, but
Right.
I've had to schedule in about 4 already, and so I feel that energy coming on already, and I haven't even gotten there yet.
Well, and I always look at that Venus. If a Venus is conjunct the Sun in Gemini, it's about the beauty of communications. That we could see. This is a great time when people may be focusing a little bit more on the aesthetics of their communications, their writing, their marketing. And you mentioned that this is a Venus star point, and you actually got a show coming up with talking about this, don't you?
Yes, the Astrology Star Sisters talk over tea. My guest is gonna be Marsha Bouchart, and she is very knowledgeable about the Venus star point. So, I think we're recording that on Wednesday, June 5th, so people can come back and watch that because it's chocked full of really good information.
Well, that's a great time on the new moon. Right there that day. A couple of other things that jump out to me as we see that this is the chart for the month is I think the moon Neptune conjunction there, and so that pairing, so I would say definitely to me that brings in a lot of creativity and imagination as far as maybe let's say creativity and writing. What do you see with the moon Neptune conjunction for the month?
Well, yeah, and it's kinda like time to take off the rose-colored glasses is what I'm calling it, and get real.
Right. But a lot of people probably are not there yet. They're going to probably be out there in that liminal space of Pisces. And then the other thing that jumps out with me is we still dealing with the Chiron really strongly in this chart, the Chiron Mars conjunction in Aries with Hygeia. It's almost like we're going through the throes of and you and I are going to be talking on another show about the Chiron Hygeia conjunction there in Aries and what that has to do with healing. And what do you think about with Mars here? What do you think this speaks to our healing for the month?
Well, I think it's like activating what needs to be worked on. It's like bringing to our attention issues that maybe we haven't totally released or totally healed, and some issues you'll never be able to totally heal them, but it's like peel back those layers and keep working on it.
Yeah.
I think this month it's like really asking if you haven't started releasing what is no longer useful in your life or that you don't need. It's really going to push you to do that, and if you have been working on doing that, there's probably still some more layers to go and release. It's like I know as I come in the entrance of my house, there's like a little corner there that I need to clean that corner up. And I just, it's like I keep putting it off and keep putting it off, but I think I'm going to get to it here pretty soon. So,
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you. I think we know that the actually Hygeia and Chiron are going to be conjunct right around the fourth, and so I definitely think this is a time that it is okay for people right now to be focusing on healing themselves. That Aries sense of self, I think that's what I see. But so I love this chart for the month, and it's also interesting for us in Seattle that it's all below all the planets are below the horizon. It's very subjective.
yes. And the other thing I want to point out is Pluto in that first house. So, we basically enter a chart or see a person through the ascendant, and then the first planet we meet is Pluto. So it's really wanting us to dig deep and work on and release some of those things that we've been maybe pushing down that we don't need to hold on to.
Right.
Okay, there's several planets that are out of bounds this month, and out of bounds is when a planet exceeds 23 degrees and 27 minutes north or south of the equator. And I put a little declination chart up there from 20 to 30 degrees, just as an example. But the moon will be out of bounds from June 6th through the 10th, and again on June 20th to the 24th. And that just so happens to be the time of the new moon and the full moon. And then Mercury will be out of bounds June 13th through the 28th. Venus will be out of bounds June 12th through the 29th. Vesta went out of bounds in February on the 28th and will be out of bounds until June 9th. Ceres went out of bounds on April 2nd of this year and won't go back in bounds until January 15th of next year. And Pallas Athena went out of bounds on May 1st until July 11th. So that's a lot of energy of planets that aren't acting how they normally would act. So they're out of the bounds of the sun. So now they, it's like maybe a little spoilt child gets to act how they want to act.
Well, again, I think this is partially us moving into Gemini season, but I really looking at that Mercury. What jumps out to me on this screen is really the importance of Mercury this month. That we know that it rules Gemini and Virgo, but rules Gemini, and that this Mercury that's out of bounds actually this out of bounds period incorporates two different zodiac signs. It's going from the Taurus into Cancer, so it's actually it's going to be ingressing into Cancer. So we see it out of bounds between two different zodiac signs.
Yes, because Mercury's moving at a pretty good clip for the month of June.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have planets ingressing into new signs. Mercury will go into Gemini on
And
June.
I meant also Mercury and Gemini to Cancer. That's what I meant on that one. But that out of bounds for Mercury, I think it really highlights that Uranus-Mercury conjunction at the bottom of the chart.
Yes, because Mercury going so fast, it's going to go through two signs in 1 month.
And it's out of bounds. It's out of bounds. So it's...
So I would say the caution for people would be really try to think before you speak, because you might just put your foot in your mouth.
Right.
Mars ingresses into Taurus on June 8th. Venus ingresses into Cancer on June 16th. Mercury ingresses into Cancer on June 17th. And the Sun ingresses into Cancer on June 20th, summer solstice day.
Yay, the solstice.
A new season.
What are you doing for the solstice there, Liz? What is your ritual for the solstice?
Well, I usually, try to just have some quiet time and write down some wishes and desires and, light a candle. And sometimes I'll go outside and drum for a little while. I haven't really decided yet because I don't know what day that follows on, but I know I'll be doing a show with the Astrology Star Sisters Talk Over Tea on the summer solstice with Sue Rose Minahan. So we'll definitely be doing a show, but that'll be, a week or 10 days before the summer solstice happens. So I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, I like to get out in nature for the solstices or the equinoxes. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and watch the sunset. So I might need to go down to the beach or something. Okay, so then we start the first week or the first 5 days because we go in chronological order through the month is what we're working on. So June 1st through the 5th. Do you want to start? Because my voice.
Sure. So the first one when we get is the Jupiter in Gemini trines Pluto in Aquarius, and Mercury and Taurus sextiles Neptune and Pisces. Mercury, of course, changes signs into Gemini, and Mercury and Gemini trines Pluto in Aquarius as well. So we see first Jupiter trines Pluto, then Mercury trines Pluto. That's really kind of important. And then the Sun conjuncts Venus, which we've already talked about in Gemini. Mercury conjuncts Jupiter in Gemini. Of course, the Sun conjuncting Venus is the Venus star point. One thing that jumps out to me about this first week, Liz, that I think is kind of important to point out to people is that Jupiter trining Pluto in Aquarius. This is the first time that Jupiter trines Pluto in an air sign in over 200 years. And I think this is really, if we look at Jupiter maximizing, it tends to expand things. This is, I think, again, a signature of the importance of communications and anything to do with air themes for the month. What do you think?
Right, and air is about communication. I think it doesn't matter if it's, even though Libra is more about relationships, but still Aquarius to me is still about communicating on a, a higher level. So, and then Mercury follows a couple of days later and trines Pluto, or the next day actually. So you could almost say that that's happening together, and that's really important. So it's really enforcing that we find new ways to communicate. And
Yeah.
like we were talking earlier, it's like we have been going down these rabbit holes of doing some research into astrology, and it's just amazing what we're coming up with. It's
Yeah.
really cool. So that's why
Time to send out a newsletter right around that period of time, the first of the month. That'd be very auspicious, as we say.
well, speaking of newsletters, mine's going out in the morning. So if you're not on my list, go to my website and sign up. And if you get on there soon, you'll get it, or you'll get the next one. So
Yeah, mine will go out. Mine will go out near the first of the month too. Yeah. So
because I do one once a week. Okay, then we have Mercury sextile Neptune. Um, so they're working in cooperation, and so Mercury's really active this first week because we have a lot going on with it, and Mercury's conjunct Jupiter. So I
yeah,
would almost call this Mercury's week in a way, because Mercury's so active in this chart.
yeah, yeah, and it's out of balance this month too. So
He Mercury might be trying to convince the other planets to go on a party that maybe the sun's not going to let them go on. So, do you want to say anything more about this first week?
no, I think we got it covered there.
Okay, then on June 6th, we have the Gemini new moon at 16 degrees of Gemini. And this is the chart for Seattle, and the time will be 5:38 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time and 8:38. Um, it's a.m. I made a mistake, Eastern Daylight Time. And I checked this so many times, I thought I caught all the mistakes.
I missed
But
that too. I missed that too. Yeah.
the sun and moon are there in the 12th house, and it's actually conjunct Venus at the same degree. So
Mm,
that's a really interesting. So it's like, pay attention to your dream time, and I would highly recommend writing down your dreams.
yeah.
Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. I think you got that covered.
Go ahead and start with this one.
So you know, if we look at the aspects that the Gemini new moon, and of course we will be doing the Gemini new moon show with Sue Rose Menahan on Talk Cosmos. If people want to look at that, we're not going to cover it in depth here, but I think a couple of important things that I like that you've pointed out here are the squares, and with the Sun, Moon, Venus squaring Saturn and Juno, and then we got that opposition with Saturn opposite Juno, and you've already, of course, mentioned the conjunction with the Sun, Moon, and Venus. So, what do you get out of this? The actually the square and oppositions here.
Well, I'm gonna. We have one of our audience wrote in that Gemini is going to be on fire, and I really like what they said, because I think that's really cool. So I thank our audience for, you know, making a comment that we can
Oh,
say.
yeah.
But back to this T square, um, it's like Saturn. It's like Saturn's being more compassionate at this time, and Juno's all about relationships. So, the communication that's happening within relationships, I think people need to find kinder ways to communicate to help shift the energy from the T square. Now, the moon will move off pretty quick, and the sun will start to move a degree a day. So it's like, it's kind of a quick moving T square. But we're still gonna have that Saturn opposite Juno. So being responsible in relationships, doing what your duty is, or your responsibility is, And that's, you know, different for different relationships. You know, don't pawn it off and let somebody else do it.
Right, right. And you know what I've noticed in clients charts and consultations is that this Juno's been in Virgo for quite a while here, and it's really making us analyze our relationships. And it's Virgo's about the health, right, and cleaning and purging. And I think this is important for purging and relationships that are not add value, and ones that need health or cleaning up. And I think that's a good example or signature for the Juno in Virgo there.
I like that. Yeah, and just being responsible. And it's like maybe you're in a relationship that, you know, it's time has come and it's time to move on, or it's maybe time to, you know, make some changes to make it better.
Or maybe talk about some, the Gemini with the Saturn there. Maybe it's a time to bring up subjects that haven't been discussed before, and discuss the serious issues in a relationship to make it better.
Oh, I like that. Thank you. Okay, and then we have the Sun, Moon, and Venus are sesquiquadrate to Pluto and quincunx to Ceres. So both these aspects are asking for some adjustment or change to take place. Ceres is out of bounds. Pluto is about the underground, or what we hold, push down. And Ceres is also about nurturing, and it's in the sign of Capricorn. So, nurturing in a responsible way, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say?
No, I wouldn't really add more to it than you already said right there. I think the Ceres component coming into it highlights a concept in relationships to how we're being nurtured or not being nurtured with our relationships. So I think there's something about again the nurturing and focusing on the health of our relationships with that one.
Yes, I think that's right. Thank you. Oh, okay, there's still some more here. You want to start on this one?
Oh, well, the south node is trining the sun, moon, and Venus, and sun, moon, and Venus are sextiling the north node. I think overall this just tells me that if we're really trying to put some new intention out there and getting some things going with this new moon, there's a good flow of energy with the nodes of accomplishing what we want to with our relationships. This is actually very positive, I think, in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, from the south node, it's like our natural talents and gifts. And then the new moon, to activate them, we have that north node in Aries. So it's giving us energy and, helping us to push forward.
Right.
Okay, the quote today is, find the source of your strength inside you, and no one outside you will be able to usurp your power. And that was by Alan Cohen.
That speaks so much to the lunar nodes there in Libra and Aries, doesn't it?
Yes. Okay, you want to start with this week?
Yeah, so the week of June 7th through the 11th, Venus in Gemini will be square Saturn in Pisces. Mars ingresses into Taurus. So if you have Mars in Taurus, you are going to have a Mars return right around this period of time. The Sun on the 9th in Gemini squares Saturn in Pisces. And on the 11th, Venus in Gemini sextiles Chiron and Hygiene in Aries. Mars in Taurus squares Pluto in Aquarius, one we want to pay attention to. And so that's the week of June 7th to the 11th.
Yeah, another active week. So the square with Mars and Pluto, they're of similar energy, but they're in different signs. So it kind of feels like Mars is going to be poking at Pluto, but it could be other people poking at us to get us to address if we've, pushed things down, or we're, trying to hide something, or, like just getting below the surface to really find out what the issue is.
Yeah, when it comes to, I always pay so much attention to Mars, and I know you do as well, those Mars aspects, especially when it comes to like Saturn or Pluto. This can be sort of a dynamic. This to me, when Pluto and Mars always come together in different aspects, it's almost like a volcanic effect. And I think here we're seeing where Mars wants to move forward with something, but Pluto comes in and says, nope, it's not going to be the way you think it is. Um, and so I think there's definitely going to be some. Uh, Mars in Taurus likes to contemplate before it makes decisions. And so if we're in a situation at this point going forward in the month, we may be a little bit more, changing our plans or contemplating about how we're going to take action. Wants to take action. Pluto comes in and says, "Nope, we're going to change your plans, and you need to rethink things." Maybe that's the way I would see that.
I like that.
Take it from somebody who has Mars and Taurus, white natal chart. So
And then we have Venus. Let's see. Yeah, Venus is square to Saturn. So and Saturn's in Pisces and Venus is in Gemini. So they're, have a little bit of adjustment that needs to take place there too. It's like, maybe you're being restricted from doing the things that you want to do, or maybe it's like you want to buy something but you can't buy it right now because you have to pay another bill first, or um, something of that sort.
right,
Do you want to
yeah.
add to that?
Well, I was going to say something else about just sort of a conceptually here about the month. We've already talked about it's, we're moving into communication and Gemini season. So it's really kind of important to pay attention to squares, because like squares means that there's something that could be tension or issues. And what jumped out to me is that Sun in Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces. So this tells me that what we're thinking and imagining, and there's going to be some type of limitations here with communications, and maybe not everybody's going to be on the same sheet of paper here when it comes to communication. So it's kind of, that's something to be aware of, that how we're coming across this month when we're communicating, and how we're coming across.
Well, that's a good one. And these squares don't necessarily have to be a big issue. They could just be a little speed bump. And but
Yeah.
they could be big, but they don't have to be big. And so, just pay attention to the communication.
Yeah.
Maybe you signed your name in 3 spots and you were supposed to sign your name in 4 spots on a contract, or you dismissed some little thing, and so
I know that happened to somebody, and they didn't get to do their travel because they didn't get their passport in time because they missed a spot.
ouch.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else about this slide, or would you like to
No,
go to the next
I'm
one?
good. Let's go to the next week.
Okay, June 12th through the 16th. We have Mercury in Gemini square Saturn. So Saturn's kind of been active with these squares. Sun in Gemini sextile Chiron and Hygeia in Aries. Mercury in Gemini sextile Chiron in Aries. Sun conjunct Mercury. Venus in Gemini square Neptune in Pisces. And Venus ingresses into Cancer. Busy week.
Yeah, I love the Sun conjuncting Mercury. I think that's really auspicious. The other thing, though, that jumped out me when we were talking about Sun squaring, Saturn, and then right behind it, Mercury comes in and squares. Again, it just highlights what we're saying about the communications. Paying attention to that.
Well, and be clear that there's not miscommunication going on, because it
Yeah.
could be a simple misunderstanding that, I thought you were going to meet me at 11, but no, it was 1 o'clock, but I thought it was 11.
Right. And the other thing that I was looking at here is this Venus and Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces. Venus is, I always look as about the beauty of whatever sign it's in, right? And it's in Gemini, the beauty of communications. And now it's squaring Neptune and Pisces, which is really creative. this could be the time when we go back and we edit something, or we, if we're doing a creative project, or we're going back and revisiting something that we've done creativity wise.
Right, exactly. And maybe the whale watching trip that you wanted to go on, it's like it gets canceled, or
Yeah.
you went, you made reservation and you go on the wrong day. I don't know.
Right. You get the times wrong, right? You misheard, Gemini, you misheard what it was supposed to be, right? Or maybe it's cloudy, you never know.
So these weeks are pretty active.
Yeah.
Okay, June 17th through the 19th. We have Mercury in Gemini square Neptune. Mercury ingresses into Cancer. Mercury conjunct Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer quincunx Pluto in Aquarius. So
Right.
I would say that there's some adjustments happening on these couple of, I guess it's 3 days that, you know, it's asking for change, but it's also asking, it's like, don't be firm in what you want to do. It's like, try to be a little bit flexible, and it, doesn't mean that you can't do something that you want to do, but it's like, have a little bit of flexibility for sure.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think this is the part of the month, the mid-month, a little bit after the mid-month, where we start to feel into the Cancer season. And the Cancer energy starts to come in with Venus and Mercury both moving into Cancer, and then they're conjuncting. This could be the time when we spend time with family. There's a lot, we start to focus more on Cancerian themes during this period.
Right, and usually around mid or a little bit past is Father's Day, but I don't remember what day Father's Day is. I don't even think I've looked it up, but um, it's like sometimes there's just certain things that you let go of or release. So there could be something that you're asked to release during this time period, I think.
Right.
Ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's keep going. Oh, the
Summer
summer
solstice.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I know that for the audience's effect here, we've got two different slides for the solstice. On this first one, we're looking at just the trines and sextile aspects, and then on the next one, we look at the squares and oppositions. Correct. So it kind of gives us a little bit of a more diving down in the chart. What I like about this one on the summer solstice is how the moon, got to pay attention to that moon, that it's sextiling the south node here. It's also trining Chiron. And we're dealing with, again, a moon in Sagittarius. And so it may, things may come up about belief systems when it comes to our relationships. And so that's what I would say there. I like that. What's an aspect you like in this chart?
Well, I want to point out that I ran this chart for Greenwich, England. So, because it's a season. So the solstices and equinoxes, I like to run them for, where time starts, basically. Because all the other charts I usually run for Seattle area, just because I'm from close to there. I would just say that, there's some ease of, the planets cooperating with each other. And in this chart, the first planet or first point that you meet is Ceres in Capricorn, and then Pluto. So, and Ceres also deals with grief. So if there's any grief that you need to deal with, and since it's near Pluto, I want to say that, there could be some issues that you might need to release around grief.
I agree. I like how Ceres is trining Jupiter as well. I think that's an auspicious, even though Ceres is retrograding here, I still think that this is a good auspicious thing around communications and the collective, with Ceres trining Jupiter in Gemini.
Well, a good cry could be very beneficial. Okay, here's the one with that we have with the squares,
And oppositions.
oppositions, and there's quincunxes or sesquiquadrates in there too. Um, but it's like there's both ease energy, but then there's a lot of energy asking us to make changes. And we're going into a new season, so that's always I think, a better time to make changes.
Right.
What about you?
I was looking at that opposition between a couple oppositions jump out to me here. Juno with Saturn.
Hmm.
Again, looking at limitations within relationships, truth versus delusion. And then the other opposition, which jumps out to me, I'm really is the Uranus Pallas opposition between Taurus and Scorpio. And you were just mentioning about it's calling us to transform. I think this is a very transformative um, aspect, and because Uranus does show up in the fourth house of family, this is a time during this season of Cancer when we could be seeing changes and dynamic changes in people's families and transformation of just transformation in families.
I like that. And changes and having to release things.
Yeah.
And then we go to the full moon in Capricorn on June 21st.
That's right.
So
And I
it's
should
like,
say, if I can, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to let everybody know that you and I do the full moon show. So we got a podcast on later on. So we'll be talking about this more in depth later in the month.
yes, we will.
And you were going to say about this full moon?
Well, it's like things are just popping and happening right along. That's like the energy is just kind of like how we started out with the moon in Aries. It feels like it's just like energy and movement and change, and it's moving.
Right.
So with we have the Sun, Venus, and Mercury conjunction. And they've been together for a little while because in Gemini they were together for a little while too, and so they're still kind of hanging out together. Those planets, but they've changed signs. And then there's a T square with Neptune in Pisces, square Sun in Cancer, and Moon in Capricorn because the Moon and Sun are opposite each other. And then we have a sextile with Mercury in Cancer, sextile Mars in Taurus. But the aspects that are involved with the full moon directly is that Neptune is T squared to the Sun and Moon, but the Sun has the other planets along with her.
Right.
So to me, it's like if you're not being real with yourself and seeing things for how they are, there's adjustments that will be required to take place. But it's also, the full moons are also a time of release, in my opinion, and to move forward to the next step. So, and Neptune is at that 29th degree and going to be going retrograde before long, even though I
Yeah.
think it happens the beginning of July, but it's, getting close to its retrograde position. So it's, probably at this point moving pretty slow.
Right. Right.
What would you like to add?
I wouldn't add anything more than you already did on this one, to be honest with you. I think you covered it pretty good.
Okay. Oh, and the Mars and Mercury are sextile each other. So now Mars is cooperating
Yeah.
more because
And I
Mars
think
was
this
square.
is very complementary signs here. The Taurus Cancer, we see it as a very positive thing. I agree. It's very receptive and nurturing aspect.
I agree. Okay, you want to start this week?
Yeah, and I think this is our last week of the month, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. So the last week of the month of, we're already into Cancer season, but On June 22nd to the 30th, the Sun in Cancer will quincunx Pluto in Aquarius. On the 26th, Mercury in Cancer trines Saturn in Pisces. On the 28th, Mercury in Cancer squares Chiron in Aries. Venus in Cancer sextiles Mars in Taurus. On the 29th, Saturn goes retrograde. This one we've got to talk about. And Mercury in Cancer sextiles Uranus in Taurus. So can I just say a couple of things? Can we jump into the Saturn retrograde?
Yep.
So Saturn retrogrades on the 29th, and it'll go take us retrograde. It'll go all the way back to 12 degrees Pisces, and right around November 15th, it stations direct. To me, this, Saturn retrograde, and I'd be curious what you think about this. Saturn retrograde, Saturn represents limitations, but it's also where we're at a period of reviewing with Saturn retrograde, our plans, and reviewing, because it is in Pisces, creative projects, reviewing how we're thinking about things, our delusions, and our thoughts, our consciousness with Saturn and retrograde. Could be a time when we have a lot of dream stuff going on during this Saturn retrograde period because it's in Pisces. What do you think, Liz?
Well, I'm calling this Saturn retrograde a reality check.
Yes. Well said. You're spot on with that one. Yeah.
Well, and
yeah.
I'm doing a Astrology Star Sisters show on Saturn retrograde, and we're calling it the reality check.
Oh yeah, because I always tell people, Saturn brings a dose of reality to the Piscean archetype. That's like, ooh, rainbows and flowers, and Saturn comes in and goes, nope, it's cloudy outside. Get a grip. Yeah, so I like that dose of reality. Yeah.
So the Sun quincunx to Pluto, is a little bit of a tension because a quincunx is tension, and so something has to be released. And the Sun is in Cancer at this time, so it could be something around nurturing or feeling safe and secure. Maybe you don't feel like you're being nurtured, or but take good care of yourself, do self-care, and then other people might nurture you too. And I'm trying to think what else. I guess we should talk about the Moon Chiron Hygeia square to Mercury. That looks like a good one.
Yeah, and before we go there, I don't want to let go of Saturn just yet.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite planets, actually. But that Mercury in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces before it goes retrograde, I think that's actually auspicious. It's about maybe looking deeper into our emotions of what we're thinking about things before it goes retrograde, and for anybody that has Mercury in Cancer or any planets in these degrees of Saturn at retrograde, it's definitely a really important part of the chart to pay attention to at that particular point of what you're reviewing and what planets you have that are aspecting Saturn.
I like that. That's great. So what do you think about this Moon Chiron Hygeia square to Mercury?
Well, Mercury, communications, and it's in emotions, but it's squaring Aries here, and of course, anytime you have planets generally in Cancer, and maybe your partner has, or you have also planets in Aries, it's always going to be squared. That's actually sort of an underlying component, fire and water in all charts. It's always important to pay attention to planets that are squaring, that will always square between Cancer and Aries. But I think this is sort of a fire water type thing, and it really speaks to Mercury's in the Moon's domicile, and it's squaring that Moon in Aries, and so definitely some analysis or revisiting our emotions and how we're communicating. really got to pay attention to how we're communicating. This could be a time when somebody maybe comes across as maybe a little too direct and with somebody and doesn't include, that sense of emotion and caring in their communications. So I think that it highlights the emotions and communications and how direct or sensitive we're being with people.
Well, our feelings could get hurt a little bit that week, perhaps, and maybe writing about it or talking to somebody that you feel confident to talk to could help. Or it could just, kind of open some kind of wound that you've had in the past but the moon moves pretty quickly away. So it's like, write like mad or talk to somebody that you feel confident to talk to. And I think that will
The
help
moment.
ease that situation.
Yeah, moment in time. I think again it highlights it's okay to nurture ourselves at this period of time with Chiron and Hygiea and Aries. I think this, as we look at this conjunction, this is an inflection point in this conjunction of Chiron and Hygeia, with the moon coming through there, just kind of like passing the night. Like you said, it's a day. It's within just a day, a day and a half here of passing over this. But so it's a really important inflection or moment in time to pay attention to that.
And then I want to point out that the Mars is sextile to Venus, so they're in a cooperative relationship because I always like to pay attention to Mars and Venus. So
Mm-hmm.
they're, cooperating now. So
Yeah, so in a relationship, it could be like the time you're like, oh yeah, let's get married. Mars and Venus, in a good relationship, you're very receptive and everything else. But again, they're paying attention to the emotions and how we're communicating is important.
absolutely. So busy month astrologically, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So do you have any comments that you want to leave our audience with or
I would just
take away?
say, start journaling this month. Think about that book you've always wanted to write. Start it this month. If you almost got it done, finish it and advertise it, publish it. This is we're moving into Gemini season. We got Mars and it's not just this month. I think this is really kicking off the Gemini with Mars and Jupiter going through it this year. I think this is the month that where there's sort of an inflection point with the Gemini energy.
I agree with everything that you said. Start writing it down. Even if on your phone, we usually have recorders. We can record stuff into them. So
Yeah,
it's really important. Yeah. And write the book or try to get it published. Self publishing's a lot easier
yeah.
nowadays, but you can always look for a publisher too. So,
Yeah, and
eh,
and if you've got Mars in Gemini, you're having a Mars return. If you're having Jupiter in Gemini, you're to the end of a 12-year cycle. The Jupiter return. And if any of these anything in Gemini is aspecting other planets, definitely important to pay attention to. Take a look at your chart. If you have how this communication energy, Gemini is aspecting other planets in your chart.
that's great. Okay. So upcoming episodes, we'll do this forecast for July, Justin and myself. And then we'll be on the archetypal symbols on Top Cosmos on June 6th. No, no, the new moon's on June 6th, and we're live on June 2nd at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
with Sue, Justin, and myself. And then Justin and I are starting another series. It's called Chiron Asteroid Series, and we're going to talk about Chiron conjunct Hygeia, our first show.
Yeah.
And then the Astrology Star Sisters talk over tea, the Venus Star Point with Marcia Bouchard, Saturn Retrograde Reality Check with Madame Simon, Summer Solstice with Sue Rose Minahan, and Neptune Retrograde Revise and Remove the Glasses with Dabney Lawless.
I'll also say that wasn't on there. We've also got, you and I are doing a full moon podcast for the month as well.
Yeah, Capricorn. I forgot to put it on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
I don't know how I missed that. I think I'd change them out. So please consider subscribing to our newsletters and our YouTube channels. My newsletter is on a light path, and my YouTube channels at Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and Justin Crockett Elzie.com is where you can find and sign up for his newsletter. And his YouTube channel is here. And then, Justin, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I've got several projects going on myself. Like you got the Astrology Star Sisters. I'm doing actually a new podcast with Michael Bartlett. And we're the relationship guys. If you ever remember the car guys from public radio, well, that's kind of like what we're covering with the relationships. And we've just finished our second episode. I'm also do a monthly Mars forecast, and I'm starting a weekly lunar forecast, and also an Ask the Astrologer series.
And he just recorded a new relationship guys today. So this is their second episode, and I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
And again, JustinCrockettLZ.com is Justin's website, and mine is alightpath.com. Thank you for joining us today. We thank the audience for joining with us, and we look forward to having you back in the future. Thanks.
Yep, thanks.